Hi, this is David again, and I wanted to cover in this video the plan of salvation. That's a Mormon phrase that means we are going to tell you who you are, why you're here, and where you're going. Now, who wouldn't want to know that? That's a pretty cool information. Yeah, I want to know who am I, where did I come from, and where am I going? Of course, the Mormons that are sending me comments, they've predicted where I'm going, but be that as it may, be that. Anyway, to really understand Mormonism, you have to understand their basic foundational tenets of their belief system. And I hope I can go through, see, I am not even into it, and I'm starting to smile, and I don't have control of myself. Many people say that I can behave very well for 10 minutes, but after that, and it's true, here's what they think, and here's what they believe, here's what they'll spend their money on, and here's what they'll indoctrinate you to if you join them. They believe in the war in heaven. In the Bible, it says that there was a war in heaven. Well, they'll take one phrase or one word and then they'll embellish it. So, you know, it's kind of like a Volkswagen with a Cadillac body on it. The Mormons have a great way of twisting and turning phrases and words to support their doctrinal beliefs. So they believe that there was a war in heaven. Now, you know, I have heard this argued all my life. I've been in the Mormon church, or was in it for over 50 years, and I'm going to give the best explanation that I can as a Mormon, what they believe. So the war in heaven was not swords and helmets and guns. It was a war of ideas, and their belief is that God, Elohim, the big God, said, I'd like to send all of you, me and you, down here to the earth, and I want you to come back and be like me. I want you to be like a God. And so the Mormons believe that two spokesmen stepped forward, and they were brothers. Now listen to what I'm saying. They were brothers. This is Mormon doctrine. Satan, Beelzebub, Lucifer, whatever words, all those words are twisted, and Jesus, both came forward. And Satan had the first say. And we were all there. We were kind of like in a sacrament meeting, or maybe state conference, or general conference. And so Satan said, hey, you know, I think you should send them all down to the earth, and I will force them to be good people, and they'll all come back to you. You won't lose one child. And as a father, he looked and said, well, let me hear what Jesus has to say. So Jesus stands up and he says, I think that they ought to go down to the world and just do what they want to do. And I'll go down and die on the cross and pay for all of the sins of the people. Like, I don't know where the idea came from for payment of sins, but that's what Jesus is purported to have said. So, and he says, the ones that believe in me and are covered by the atonement, they're going to come back. And of course that was a harder plan. That was a more difficult plan, and it really required Jesus to be tortured and died. But anyway, God said, I think that's a good idea, Jesus. I think that's a great idea. Let's send them all down there to be tested. Tested in what? I don't know. Tested to be a God? I don't know, because there's no manual or books about how to be a God, just scriptures written by old people. So anyway, God chose Jesus, and he said, you're the one. You're my boy. So the atonement and the saving of sins and paying for sins became the doctrine of the Mormon church. Now, Satan had a lot of friends, evidently, in the pre-existence, and they said, no, we don't like the Jesus plan. And Satan said, well, why don't you come with me and we'll rebel? So there's a little bit of a support in the King James Bible that says that a third of the host, I guess, is the group of people, went with Satan. They said, hey, we don't need bodies, we don't want bodies, we're going with Satan, he's cool. So, Satan then, the Mormons believe, was rebellious, and God said, you know, you're evicted, you're out of here. And and again, it's all twisted in Mormon philosophy and doctrine, but some say that he was sent to the earth, that they're invisible down here. See, I can't do it. I can't do it without laughing because I used to believe this crap. So all of these invisible spirits are down here and they're trying to yank on me and you to be bad people. Oh, well, if Jesus is going to cover for all of the sins of us, why yank on us? I don't know. I don't know, but that's their philosophy, okay? The plan of salvation. So, be that as it may, some say in the Mormon church he was banned into outer darkness. I don't know, you know, if he had flashlights. I just don't know. But anyway, let's come on down to the modern Mormon church. They will tell you that that's their history and their background. Now, this being a God thing is the most confusing and the most hilarious homie circus in the Mormon doctrine I've ever seen. Brigham Young, who'd like to have 57 wives, so we know what he was doing most of his time, other than massacring people down in Washington County, the Mountain Meadows Massacre. He was a busy man. So Brigham Young said, well, God evidently has a penis, and all of his wives, now see, he's polygamous. I don't know if it's a he or she, but the Mormons believe God has a penis, and that he has millions and millions of wives. He's a pretty busy man too, isn't he? You know, I think Brigham goes, hey, you know, if God can do it, why can't I do it? So when he has, the God has the intercourse with these millions and millions of wives, the babies are born. I don't know where they're born. I don't know if they have hospitals. I don't know. They're male, female. I don't know. But their philosophy is that all of these little spirits are running around heaven. And it's just like a FLDS family, I guess, that all the mothers are taking care of all the kids in a huge daycare center. And the kids are jumping up and down and screaming, God the Father, would you please send me to the earth? I'm living with you. I have all my food. I have all of my sanity. I have all of my comforts being with you, the eternal God. But geez, send me to the earth where I can die of starvation or be abused or have to work and learn a whole bunch of things that aren't going to be any use up here. Please take me out of this perfect environment and send me into the world where I can be tested and I'll have to suffer. And then when I suffer, you've told me that I will pass your test. I don't know what test, what father would test his kids with starvation and abuse and the rigors of the world. When I've asked fathers here on the earth if that's what they would ever do to their children, they go no. But the God the Father, he's the God and he can kind of do what he wants to do. So he says, I want you to go to the earth and I want you to suffer. I want to just crush your ass. And then if you believe in me, I'm going to let you come back here and you can be a God. Well, I guess that's an attractive idea to all these kids jumping around in the daycare center, and so they want to suffer. I guess I put my hand up and you did too because we're here, according to the Mormons. Okay, now there's a distinction too in Mormon philosophy that you have a body and you have a spirit. And everybody up there that's making all these decisions have spirits. Except God. He has a body. Now, we don't know in the Mormon church where he got his body. I don't know if he dug it up somewhere or if he just invented it himself because he's God, but he has a real body and a real penis. But the wives that he has up there are all spirits. So this gives a lot of credence to the virgin birth, that the spirit penis came down and impregnated the physical body of Mary. So I guess the Elohim of the Mormon church has a penis and plenty of time. I guess he rests on Sunday to have intercourse with all of these women. And they produce spirit babies. So when you mix physical sperm with a body with a spiritual egg, I can't even do this, out comes a baby spirit. Okay, Mormon philosophy, Mormon doctrine. You believe it or you're out. So, they come down to get a body. Well, there's a privilege. Hemorrhoids, old age, high blood pressure, bypass surgery, pain, suffering, teeth falling out, rotten, can't find food. It goes on and on. You know as well as I do that a body is not a reward for heavenly beings. And what sense does it make if a baby spirit is with their own father and their own mother? Who in God's name would ever think the baby's going to go, punish me, Daddy, send me somewhere where I can be tested that I really love you? Maybe there was a way to love him there, I don't know. So anyway, Mormon philosophy. So down we come, and Brigham Young says, have as many babies as you can because you're doing God a favor bringing his children down here into this life. Well, I'm not sure Brigham Young's motivation was all the children. I think Brigham may have had similar motivations to Joseph Smith with the 14-year-olds. I don't think it was to bring the spirits down. I think there might have been other motivations. So here we are. We come down to the earth, and if you're a really good spirit up there with Elohim, you get born white, and you get born in the United States. That's cool. But I guess he has some extremely rebellious children because most of them are not born in the United States with all the privileges and the wonderful freedoms that we have. 6,000 children a night die on the face of this planet from starvation. So I don't think they were the white Aryan militia KKK group that we are. So if you're dark-skinned, if you are black, you're going to be born in Africa, South America, some in Asia, all over the place. Well, those people that are born into that poverty, they're really being tested. This is the Mormon doctrine that you and I, if you're Aryan and white, we're privileged. We came here and it was foreordained. They love that word. It doesn't mean that you were predestined to be here, but you were foreordained. So it's a good thing your mother and your father had intercourse in the United States because you're a privileged little spirit. So I guess there's somebody that moves the spirits up there that goes, oh, you were bad, you go to Black Africa, you put that in a body, oh, this is a good one, put him or her in the United States. Hey, it's silly, but this is what these people believe, and some of them are educated, and some of them have degrees, and some of them don't have any common sense. So anyway, you're here on this planet according to your works. Now, one of the things you have to learn about Mormonism, it's works. It's not belief, it's works. They think you should believe a little bit in Jesus, but boy, you work every day and you get Jesus points. And you get more and more points, and basically you get to go back with a body and see Elohim. And he'll say, you know, welcome back, you were tested. Now, think of this, okay? Think of the equalness of the test. Here I am, Jesus, sitting in, you know, a middle-class home that has lights, a video camera, and TV, and air conditioning, and forced air, and a washing machine, and a dishwasher, and a view, and I don't think some of those Africans are suffering like I am. I can't take it. I can't take this doctrine. If this isn't a fairy tale from another world, I don't know what it is, okay? We're not tested equally, and we're not tested fairly. So the test idea of a God trying to torture his children and reward others that are really good so their test doesn't have to be so hard, that's unfair. It's totally unfair. At the very base, it takes brown and black people who live close to the equators or in hot countries and whatever. Their skin historically was darker because of the tropical effects of the sun. So here we are, we're all suffering equally, and we're all suffering the same way. My refrigerator is full right now, but the African kid is laying there, you know, where you can see his ribs and you can see, and God doesn't come down and do anything. But that's one of his children. See, that's one of his children. Now, I've got 14 kids, and so I have some right to say that I have a certain amount of knowledge of fatherhood. No father that I have ever met would do this to his children. Say, I want you to go out there and suffer and then when you come back to me, I'll accept you. You will be acceptable. Well, that's the fairy tale of the plan of salvation. Now, the other thing, jeez, I'm sorry, I can't control myself. The other thing is that if you're really good here, and you do all the things the Mormons tell you to do, you go to the temple, you wear your garments, you pay them millions or thousands of dollars in tithing, you'll go back to Elohim and you can take your body. The Mormons believe in the resurrection, but there's a little twist to the way they believe about the resurrection. If you're really, really good, you can keep your penis and your vagina. When you go back to heaven, you're going to need it because, see, you're going to be a god, and you've got to be screwing and having babies and being a god and running other worlds. So if you're a bozo and you didn't suffer enough, or that you didn't chant and rave in their temples and their white robes and all the paraphernalia that goes on with Mormons, you lose your penis. I don't know if Lorena Babbitt is at the Golden Gates. I don't know. But you lose your vagina too. So, yeah, that's Mormon doctrine, basically, that you're going to be asexual. So, you know, if you're like me, you might as well enjoy them now, because you may not have it there for eternity. That's a long time not to have a penis. So, and I apologize if I'm a little crude and rude. I've got at least 20-25% females that watch my videos, and I certainly don't want to have any kind of prejudice one way or the other, but I'm sure if I had a vagina, I'd like to keep it too. I don't think I'd like to be looking like a Barbie doll. So anyway, be that as it may. So, you come to the earth, and the privilege, the white people. Oh God, if this isn't the most discriminatory doctrine in church I've ever seen in my life. If you're a good person, you're born in the United States, and you're born with the gospel on the earth. See, now, the millions of people that were born that deserved the gospel, they've all died. So the trick to the Mormon church is everyone is going to be a Mormon, so the Mormons look up all of their names, and they give them to the temple, and then the young kids go in there and they dunk them in the water and use the dead people's names. So now the Mormons believe those are Mormons, and up there, because they didn't have a chance down here, that they can say, yeah, I'm a member of the Mormon church, let me in. I don't know if there's going to be one person that is going to say, I want to be a Mormon. Gee, I really like the cold down there. Let me in, Father. But anyway, they spent enormous amounts of money, in their temples, and baptizing and clothing. And I have other videos that you can take a look at what goes on there. But when you are white and you're born in America, you're lucky. If you consider 2 missionaries knocking on your door as luck. I don't, but you might, and they're going to knock on your door and say, we're not soliciting, but we want your gross income of 10% for the rest of your life, but we're not soliciting. Well, to tell you the truth, a magazine kid coming to the door selling a magazine for $23 a year, I think I would, buy his magazines before I give up 10% of my gross income. But a lot of people like to give up 10% of their gross income because they don't want to lose their penis, and they want to get up there and have millions of wives. Well, there's some motivation there, perhaps, for anyone that doesn't have any common sense. So now you're privileged. You hear these young people. They're very well dressed. They're well spoken. They've been through basic training. They've gone to a military camp, a philosophy and institution, which is called the Language Training Mission at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, and they've learned your language there, and they've learned how to present to you in a salesman-like way for you to believe. And they only give you the basics. They don't give you any kind of the stuff that I'm telling you here, the plan of salvation and no penises. They don't tell you that until you're in and you're so scared you're going to lose your penis, you just keep going with them. Anyway, that then basically brings you to the point of the gospel. And the Mormon missionaries will teach you a few lessons, and then they'll say to you and pressure you, when do you want to get baptized? How about next week? How about next month? How about the 26th? The closing with Mormon missionaries is very well orchestrated. And you like them. They're young kids, and they're sweet and they're kind. And you go, hey, if this is a representation, which it's not, which it's not, I think I'd like to join this organization. So they interview you. This is the beginning of the rest of your life of being interviewed. And the last or final big question, they'll say a couple of, you believe Joseph Smith, and you believe the gold plates disappeared, and no one basically saw them, even though they have a statement in the front of the gold plate Book of Mormon there, oh, we saw them and we touched them. And then you explore that and they say, well, we saw them with our spiritual eyes. Yeah. So anyway, the new member will go, okay, what's the last question? I said, well, we want you to pay 10% of your gross income to the Mormon Church for the rest of your life. Are you willing to do that? Now, I don't know why common, ordinary, supposedly intelligent people say yes, but some do. And probably a lot do and say, well, I'm not going to pay it, but I'm going to tell them. So, okay, you go to their chapel or their stake center now, and they dress you all in white. Now, here becomes the subliminal white, white, white. The temple clothes are all white, the shoes, the socks, the underwear, the garments, the baker's hat, the veils on the women. The only thing that's not white is the apron. The apron is green, supposed to be from the Garden of Eden. So when you get baptized, one missionary or someone who has the priesthood, God has given him the direct power to do this, he will dunk you in the water. He will raise his right hand and say, you know, by the authority of the Holy Melchizedek priesthood, in the name of Jesus Christ, I baptize you. Down you go. You go under the water. They believe in immersion, and out you come soaking wet. And then you go and sit in a chair. No, they let you get dressed first. Now I think about it. They let you get dressed in your dry clothes. Then you come out and sit in a chair, and 2 or 3 other men, only men, see, women, they can't do anything. They're baby makers. And the men say, that's the most important job. Well, you know what? I've watched 14, not quite, 12 of my kids born. And being a baby maker doesn't look all that attractive to me. But the Mormons say the women have the highest calling because they have God's little spirits coming out of the daycare center up there inside of them, and how they come out. Oh my gosh, I don't think being a woman is that great of an activity. So, now you're a member. They put their hands on your head. We confirm you a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and say unto you, receive the Holy Ghost. Okay. So now your name is on the records of the church. Now you're going to be introduced to the ward that you're going to be in. A ward is a geographic area that is fairly small in a neighborhood or where the Mormon church is spread way out. It could go out miles and miles. But anyway, you go and meet the ward members, and so when you come in, oh my gosh, it's like you've walked into heaven. It's like they're all, you know, chanting and raving, and now I'm exaggerating. This is not true, but they love bomb you. They grab you, and oh, you're so wonderful to be here. We're so happy to have you, Sister Smith, Brother Smith. They always start the cult words. They always start the love bombing and the cult words, and they're trained to do that. That's not spontaneous. They are trained by their leaders to do that. So you feel pretty good. You go, hey, this ain't bad. This ain't bad. And so you're in there and you meet the bishop. He's in charge, the judge in Israel. Now he's a truck driver or a bricklayer or an electrician or a drywall man, but he is your judge on moral issues and religious issues and your family, your relationships. He knows everything, but he's never been to school to learn any of that. But that's okay, because he and God talk all the time, and they know. They know. So the first years there, you're just very gently oriented into the cult, and they will give you a job. And hey, boy, that makes you feel good. You're so important. You never had a job in a church before, so you become the primary chorister. So the kids sing, and you give them, you know, fun and happiness, and it's kind of a neat little thing. The kids sing, and your job, you get all kinds of praise and all kinds of evaluation by the wards and the bishop that you're doing such a good job. Well, let me not belabor that baptism on up. Now, after you've been there for a year, you can't go to the temple until you've been there a year. See, they don't think that they have indoctrinated you enough to take the shock of the temple. And believe me, there is a shock. My mother went to the temple because my father forced her. First time, she never went back. And that's fairly, well, I'm not going to say it's common, but it's not unusual. It is not unusual in the Mormon Church to be traumatized with the rituals of the Masonic handshakes and the things that go on in there, that people don't want to come back because you're never told what goes on there. It's a secret. Oh, the Mormons say it's not a secret. It's sacred. It's sacred. But we expect you to walk through that door and see chanting and separate the men from the women, and you're wearing all this funny, ridiculous clothing, and you're doing handshakes and tokens and symbols and pale ale, and oh my God, it's totally different than what you've ever seen in the Mormon Church. It's shocking. It's shocking. So now after you've been in the church for a year, and especially if you're married, they're going to say, you know what, you need to go to the temple. Oh, there's a wonderful blessings in the temple. When you get your endowment, you're going to feel, see, they're predisposing people of what they are to feel and what they are to think. That's a cult. They are programming. They're programming subliminally and overtly. If you know anything about occult training, much of the cult training is under the radar. It's not words, and that's why the Mormons will say, we're not a cult, we're not, look around, we're not wearing funny hats, we're not killing people. See, they want you to look at the outside. The inside of the brain is picking up all kinds of words and all kinds of phrases of how you're supposed to feel and think. You are privileged. You're going to get a temple recommend, and the bishop and the stake president are going to ask you and interview you, and then you can go to the temple and get married for time and eternity. You're already married for time, so that's nothing, but they believe their authorities can marry you after you die. I don't know how the other millions and millions of wives are going to feel about that, but hey, that's a question you don't ask. In a cult, you don't ask questions, you just obey. And in the temple, there's a lot of phrases, and the main one is bow your head and say yes. Bow your head and say yes. Bow your head and say yes. Stand up, sit down, put your right hand, okay, do this, change your robe over here, change this over here, sit, and it's just busy, busy, busy. Bow your head and say yes. Bow your head and say yes. If you don't think that's a cult, that's okay. That's okay. You want to do that, that's okay too. And make sure that when you raise your hand, see, you've already promised the missionaries by baptism that you're going to give them 10%. But they didn't tell you, see, they forgot to tell you. When you go to the temple, you raise your right arm to the square to swear an oath that you will live the law of consecration, which is everything that you have now and everything that you get in the future, you consecrate and give to, and they'll say it, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Bow your head and say yes, and their hands are right out for everything you own. Now, no one told you that before you went to the temple. No one said that you're going to promise to give the Mormon Church everything you have. But you've been told and programmed to believe this is a privilege. This is a wonderful thing to get your endowment. Now, when you go to the temple for yourself the first time, you have to do your own washings and anointing. Now, if this isn't the most humiliating and embarrassing thing in a cult, one of the techniques of a cult is embarrassment and humiliation and low self-esteem. And so you go into the temple, they tell you to take all your clothes off, you're naked, you're bare-ass naked, just like you were born. And then they will give you a shield. And a shield, now I've heard that these have changed because I haven't been there for several years. But the shield, when I went, was open on the sides. So if someone was walking by you sideways, you could, oh, they're naked. You're trying to hold your shield down. And you got old people, young people. The women do stay with the women. They don't mix the women with the men, which I'm surprised. But anyway, you go into these little booths that, and they always have curtains. You know, it reminds me of the Wizard of Oz. Don't pay any attention to that man behind the curtain. So you have an old person there, and they have a little dipping bowl that has a consecrated oil in it. I don't know what it is, but they dip their hands in the oil, and then they put a little on your forehead, and then they start chanting and over again that you are a king and a priest under the Most High God, and then they play with your nipples a little bit, put a little oil on that, and then when they put a little oil on my navel, I started going, hey, you know, how low is this guy going to go? And that's as low as they went right there, but it was strange. But they don't tell you that. You just go in naked, put oil all over you, and they don't know. So then you come out of the washing and anointing room, and there's another old guy there, and he's going to put on your first pair of garments. Now, garments are basically long underwear. For the common person, they're long underwear. But the garments have on them signs, tokens. They have the square over here and the compass over here over the breast, and then there's a naval sign, and then the right leg at the knee has a sign also. And you learn through the rest of the ceremony what those signs mean, etc. They're just Masonic things that Joseph Smith stole. But this guy helps you get dressed. Now you get dressed, and you go back out, and now you put your temple clothes on. And that's white pants, white shirt, white socks, white shoes, and white skin. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm trying to be dignified. I'm trying to be professional. So, you go in your whites out of the locker room, and you come to another curtain. Another curtain. And the man comes out from behind the curtain, and he'll say to you, Brother David, by the authority of the holy Melchizedek priesthood, which I have, you are going to have a new name. And I said, well, you know, my parents already gave me a name. And go, no, you get a new temple name, which you shall never divulge upon this earth, never. And you're only to give it in a certain place in the temple when you're told to. So he'll tell you your new name, and it's basically biblical. It's going to be Adam, Cain. Well, if you're black, it's going to be Cain, I guess. I never thought about that, because the Mormons believe all the black people have the curse of Cain on them. That's what Mormons believe. It's the stupidest thing in the world, and most discriminatory thing in the world, but that's what they believe. You want to join them? Pay your money, go to the mall. So anyway, you have your new name, and you have to remember it, and that's kind of hard sometimes, because you go into this room, and now they divide the girls from the guys, and you sit on separate sides of the room, and the guys have on their regular white clothes, and the girls have on just a regular white dress. Well, now the temple ceremony starts, and there's a guy, he's always old, he's at the front, and there's an altar at the front. And he has already chosen two people in the background while you were getting your name or whatever, a man and a woman that are going to come to the altar and be witnesses. So if you lie, these witnesses are going to tell God. So he gets a young couple, and they go up and they kneel on the altar, and they, I guess they hold hands up there, and then he has the triple combination. Usually it's white. I don't know where you can get a white triple combination except in the temple. So he's there, and he's dressed in all of his whites, and he looks pretty cool. He's got a white coat on, a white tie. You just look like a peasant in your whites. So the ceremony starts, and again, I'm not going to belay this because it always upsets Mormons, and I don't care if they're upset, but to me it's boring. It's silly stuff. And he will tell you when to start dressing. You carrying your clothes with you, your temple clothes. And he'll tell you, you know, put on the robes and put it on the right shoulder and tie it over here. Put on the baker's hat, tie it over here, and put on the white, the green apron. Okay, and so you do all that. Everybody's waiting for the last old guy that can't get it all put together. And then you sit down. The women have these hats on and a veil that comes over the face. So you sit there, and he gives you instructions, and he says, okay, this is the way you do the first handshake of the Aaronic priesthood, this is the way you do the second handshake of the Aaronic priesthood, and the new name is the Son of God, and then the other name is the new name you got in the temple today, and you're up and down, just like a Catholic church in a mass, you're up and down, and you're changing the robes, and you're changing the hat, and it's chaotic. But again, that is the mark of a cult. That you're so chaotic and so nervous that you're so embarrassed that you don't dare say anything. You don't dare say anything. Now, they do say at the beginning of when you all get seated, if any of you here want to leave and don't want to take on these sacred ordinances, leave now. Well, we didn't know what the sacred ordinances were. See, that's the Mormon way. They say, you had a chance to leave. You do. But how do you know what the ordinances are? They weren't taught to you. You haven't seen them yet. How can you make an informed decision? Well, that's the trickery of a cult. Because they'll say, well, why did you go through? If you didn't want those ordinances, why did I go, well, I didn't know what they were. Well, that's no excuse. Of course it's an excuse. But what they say and what they do are two totally different things. Okay, so now you're listening to this old man up front, you're dressing, you're moving your robes around, you're doing this, you're doing that. And finally, you get into the Melchizedek priesthood, and those are more like handshakes and the sure sign of the nail and the patriarchal grip, locking in the little fingers and shaking hands and whatever. Okay, now you go through this whole thing, and during the breaks of dancing up and down and changing clothes, there's a movie. And it's a movie that the Mormon Church has made, and it's telling you about how the world was built, and about Adam and Eve, and how Satan, of course, he tempted Eve. It's always the girl's fault. You know, I don't understand religion, why girls and women have the lowest prestige and the lowest status. I just think it's sad. It's so, so sad. Many times they're more intelligent, many times they're more patient and more wonderful people than we are, but we're Mormons. We're patriarchal. We're in control. So you watch the movie. Many people sleep. You're not supposed to snore. Just a joke. Just a joke. And finally you get to the instructions on the veil. Okay. The veil is a curtain. Okay. And they open they open the first curtains up, and then there's another curtain there. Okay. And the man has a stick. Now he's an instructor, and he has a stick, and he says, this is the marking on your garment. This means the compass, and to always, go towards God. This is the square, always be honest. And this is the knee, every knee shall bow, and every tongue confess that Jesus is the Christ. Yeah, they'll all bow and confess that, the Mormon Church is going to take your money, and Jesus has nothing to do with this whole thing. So he instructs you there, and he says, okay, now each one of you are going to have to come to the veil and go through. Now, I worked in the Los Angeles temple for about a year, and I was a veil worker, who are volunteers that have some time off from work and can go to the temple, and we're in the back. We're kind of like in a movie production. We're the backstage people. And so the veil has broken in the veil. You can reach through it, through the square and the compass and whatever. And so I was the veil worker, and I was representing God. And these people coming through the session were people who believe that when they die, there's going to be a curtain, and that God is going to be on the other side of the curtain, and they're going to have to perform these rituals or they're not getting in. Sorry, that's Mormon doctrine. I was there, I've seen it, I've worked it, and I was a veil worker. So the man or the lady, if I'm working the women's side, is going to be girls and women coming through, or the man's side. Now, I've said this in other videos, and I'm not going to back down from this. I was there. There were some men that were gross. They were hideous. And they always wanted to work the women's side of the veil. And, there was complaints. There were complaints from the women of how that last part of these ordinances went. And so there were some of the men that weren't allowed to work on the women's side of the veil because they were sexual addicts, or I don't know, just dirty old men, I don't know. But anyway, I was able to work on the women's side. And so, and I'll give you an example. I'll tell you on the women's side, okay? So there'll be an old lady standing with the young girl, maybe 22, 23, and it's her first time coming through the temple. And the old lady has a knocker. Wait a minute. I don't want to say she has knockers. That's not what I'm saying. She has a little hammer, a knocker, that... You can't even do this. I'm going crazy. She takes this little hammer knocker, and she knocks on the support system of the curtain. And she knocks 3 times. And then I part the veil and I say, what is wanted? And she'll say, Eve, having been true and faithful, desires to converse with the Lord at the veil. And I'll say then, present her at the veil. And then I put my hand through the veil and I give her the first token, which is on the knuckle of the Aaronic priesthood. And I'll say to her, what is that? And she'll say, that is the first token, or she won't say that. She'll say, the first token of the Aaronic priesthood. And I'll say, has it a name? And she says, it has. And I said, will you give it to me through the veil? And she said, she'll say, the Son. I think that's the first one. I could be a little mixed up. This has been, 20 years, and well, not that long, but it's been a while. And so then I let go of her purposely. And then I will give her the second token of the Aaronic priesthood, which is the same position, but it's between the first and second knuckle. And I'll say, what is that? She'll say, the second token of the Aaronic priesthood. And I'll say, has it a name? And she said, it has. And I'll say, oh, will you give it to me through the veil? And then she'll say, Mary. That's the new name that she got at the very beginning of the ceremony. And then I will let go of her, and then I will put my hand through again, and I'm thinking here because it's been a long time, and I'll say, what is that? And she'll say, the first token of the Melchizedek priesthood, and I'll say, has it a name? And she's, now I'm paraphrasing here, you can get it on the internet, the whole ceremony's there. But I did this. This isn't something I read on the internet, this is something I did. And I'll say, what is that? And I say, that's the second token of the Melchizedek priesthood, the patriarchal grip or sure sign of the nail. And I'll say, well, does it have a name? And she says, it has. And I said, will you give it to me? She says, well, I have not yet received it. That's why I've come to speak or converse with the Lord at the veil. And okay. So I hold her hand and I say to her, this is the name of the token. Health in the navel, marrow in the bones, strength in the loins and in the sinews, power in the priesthood be upon me and upon my posterity throughout all generations of time and throughout all eternity. Then I say, what is that? And now she has to repeat that back, and she can't do that. So the temple worker lady there whispers in her ear, and she does that, and as soon as she's done with that, I say, that is correct. And then the lady with the knocker, the one knocker, knocks on the post again, and I'll say, what is wanted? Part the veil. What is wanted? Eve, having been true and faithful, desires to enter the presence of the Lord. I put my right hand through, and I bring her through the veil, and then she sees this wonderful celestial room that has chandeliers and gold things and, ornate, gaudy room. Now, let me back up. That's basically the temple ceremony. She can go home now. And she's received her endowments. Now, if she's getting married, now she goes from the celestial room over to a ceiling room, and then that's pretty straightforward. You're in your temple clothes, you look like a damn fool. You're not in, you may be in a wedding dress, but your temple clothes are all over them. And the girls are very disappointed that they can't have a traditional nice wedding. And there they have rooms that have mirrors that when you go in, they look eternal. Again, these are subliminal cult training that goes into the subliminal mind that, you're here for eternity. So the women who are getting married go into the ceiling room. There's one guy there that legally can marry them. And he's in white, and he gives them a little talk about sexual purity, and their children are all going to go to heaven and to love each other. And then they kneel at the altar, and he does a basic temple ceremony, a marriage ceremony. But he'll use the words for time and all eternity. And of course, the family members and the people who have paid their money and gone to the mall, they're sitting there with her. If you didn't pay money and you're a parent, you're sitting out on the grass in the front of the temple. You're not allowed to see your children married. That's the doctrine. That's the heartache. That's the rules and the sadness. So she gets married, and then she can come out of the temple with her husband, and everyone is happy. They go on their honeymoon. So they've been endowed and they've been sealed for time and eternity. Now let me back up to the veil, which I find curious. When you do the veil ceremony, they've changed this now. See, in the last, I don't know, I think it's been maybe 10 years. But before, when I was a veil worker, we always delivered the signs, tokens, and symbol upon the 5 points of fellowship. And who the hell knows what 5 points of fellowship is? Well, it's inside of foot to inside of foot, knee to knee, breast to breast, hand to back, and mouth to ear. That's the 5 points of fellowship. So, in the old days, when I was doing this, you'd be at the Vale with these young girls, and you had to pull them in close to be able to reach their back, and the only thing between you was the curtain. And you put knee to knee, and you leaned into them, breast to breast, and she put her hand through on my back, and I put my hand through on her back, and then did the signs and the tokens with my right hand. Again, that's supposed to be an eternal presentation. The church is the same today as it was forever. God never changes. Well, the Mormons, watch their lips. They'll say those things, but watch what they do. I've been there. I've seen it. I've heard it. I've been there. And so when I was there one day, the temple president said, we're not doing the 5 points of fellowship anymore. I said, what? We've changed the ceremony? He goes, yeah. I said, why? He says, well, some of the women were complaining that they were getting the 6 points of fellowship. And if I was a woman, again, why should I have to stand there with an old man and be breast to breast with him and knee to knee with him? The Mormons got away with that for years and years and years. They, again, took advantage of women. They're second-class citizens. They're not allowed to say anything. But these new girls coming through equal rights and standing up for themselves finally said, no, I'm not going to put my breast on this old guy. And so the Mormon Church took one of its sacred ordinances and they just trash canned it so the women would continue to pay their tithing and go to the mall and go to the temple. So basically, now you come out and you're sealed for time and eternity. You've had your endowment. And this new baptized person now has been in a year and they have that. And so you spend the next 20 or 30, 40 years raising your kids, which you can't afford because you're giving 16% of your income, not 10%, because there's another 1 or 2% for fast offering, another 1% for the patron fund, and the church just comes up with fund after. It used to be the building fund to help build the fund, temple fund. I mean, they just know how to pull the money out of its members. But that's cult. Cults do that. And you're being blessed. You have fast offerings, which means you don't eat one meal a month. Then you take all that money that you saved in your family fasting and give it to the poor, and it seldom gets to the poor. And some of it does, most of it doesn't. So you're raising your kids. Well, your kids now are inundated with this cult that by the time they've been through primary and they're 8 years old, they're required to be baptized. Boy, if your kid's not baptized, he's a piece of shit. Everybody knows it. And everybody thinks, what's wrong with your family? Well, so you have to go through the ritual of baptism. And of course now in the Mormon Church, everything is being done on temple recommends. If you don't have a temple recommend, you can't baptize your own children. You can't even bless your new baby. These are new rules in the Mormon Church because they're losing their ass on members resigning, and tithing is low, and they lost in the stock market crash. And so now they want everyone to have a temple recommend, which means one of the main questions, just like the missionaries, are you going to pay a full tithing? And of course at the end of the year there's an accounting. You have to go in for tithing settlement. They never tell you this. You got to go in and say to the bishop, yeah, that's how much I paid, and yeah, that's a full tithe, or nah, I cheated a little bit right there. There goes your recommend. There goes your recommend. So now every interview is, asking you about your penis or your vagina, if you're morally clean, that you don't masturbate. Oh my God, that's next to death in the Mormon Church. It's okay to have wet dreams, but you can't masturbate. They will interview and interview you for every job you get in the church. If you're the primary chorister, if you're in the primary presidency, if you're in the elders quorum, if you're in the high priest quorum, the interview after interview, constantly repetitious of your penis and your vagina and your tithing. That's the plan of salvation according to the Mormon Church. Now when your kids get to be about 18, 19, the boys automatically are expected to go on a mission. And the girls are pretty much expected to get married. And by then you should have risen up into hierarchy of the Mormon church and got better jobs and paid more tithing. So the boys go off, and this is the premier, the closing lines of indoctrination. When you send a boy who's 19 years old, very impressionable, away from his friends, his parents, and TV and radio, movies, and you isolate him mentally and emotionally and put him into a foreign country where he can barely speak the language, I think he's going to have some stress. What do you think? Well, that stress is part of occult training. Fear, constant fear that you are going to do something wrong with your penis or your vagina, or you didn't pay all your money. There is a constant intimidation and fear throughout the Mormon cult doctrine. And so that young man, or if the girl goes on a mission, it's the same process. But they want the men on missions mostly because they become the leadership of the church. And if the leader of the church is well founded in the cult, then the cult continues generation after generation. So these young men go out, and here's you won't believe me. You won't believe me. If you're not a Mormon, you won't believe me. If you're a returned missionary, you know damn well what I'm saying is true. If your mother or your father dies, the church thinks it's more important that you stay on your mission. You don't go home for your mother or your father's funeral. That's not cult. That the church now, the cult now, is more important than your natural family, the person who gave you birth and trained you to get on a mission for 20 years. You don't go home. You can call home, I think it's once or twice a year, Christmas and Thanksgiving, and now it's a little bit more modern. Some missionaries are allowed to use mission computers, but they are totally parental control. They can't get basically on the internet. They can maybe write an email, and the mission president now is the gate and source of what goes out, what comes in. It's just like Nazi Germany. It's just exactly like Nazi Germany. And that's the way a cult controls what information comes in, what information goes out. It's always positive in, positive out. It's no questions, and you just do what you're told. Well, now the mission really intimidates these young people. They have meetings constantly, training meetings, and they get together and they tell these missionaries what to say, what to do at the door, and what the prophet and Jesus is